Traditionally, university assignments were marked on paper. It's a very laborious process, and the sad fact is a lot of the feedback is never picked up by students. Increasingly, we're using the review software. Review is an online criteria-based marking and feedback system. On the student side, it encourages them to self-assess against criteria, and this is really important because it engages them more deeply in the assessment process. Really makes them think about the criteria that they're being asked to perform against.
And there were sometimes very, very large gaps there, particularly students new to university, students new to the culture, the international students, and men, actually, more than women, tend to overestimate how they're going to do on the various criteria. And it's actually a human trait generally, right? But there are particular groups of students who are particularly prone to overestimating their capacity in certain areas.
The way that reviews help me is that before I get my marks, I actually review myself, which makes me think about how I've worked, and it makes me think about the different criteria and whether I've done as well as I think I have, and when I do get my marks back, I'm not surprised.
Staff and students see very similar interface. Basically, they see an assessment task, and each assessment task has a number of clearly stated criteria. Against the criteria, there's a long slider which staff and students can place the marker which shows their self-assessment or their assessment estimate.
Well, reviews help me as a lecturer in that it helps me give better feedback. It helps me give quicker feedback to the students. I'm able to publish that feedback quicker. It saves paper and it saves me a lot of effort.
Yeah, it's helpful because it's also very visual, so I get the information back really quickly, so I look at it and I can straight away see the difference, and I can look over it, and then in the future I can be like, okay, I remember that last time I didn't do very well in this section, and I remember it because of the visual aspect.
They are able to avoid looking at that number and fixate on that final mark, and they're able to see visually how well they did in each of the criteria and compare their results for each criterion, see where their weaknesses and strengths lie as well.
So I used review in a course for the Masters of Commerce students, and they were assigned to do basically just written assignments, so about 3 to 5 pages of written text. So I was able to set up the assignment marking in review and then very, very easily see for each student where their strengths and weaknesses lied, where they are overestimating their own ability or underestimating their own ability, and also monitor lots of tutors who were doing a lot of marking for me as well, and make sure that I could, easily moderate upwards or downwards if a particular tutor was overmarking or undermarking.
Using review, it calculates the final mark for you, so it saves you using a calculator to add up the different marks for each of the criteria. And then you don't always have to, you don't at all need to check again whether you've calculated it right. So it does all that for you, and that cuts down your time substantially.
I really like the class average section because I can see the class average not just as a mark as a whole, which doesn't give me much feedback, but from every criteria. So I may have done really well in one section and the class did not as well, but in the reference section, for example, I might have not done as well, but the class had a higher average, so it gives me more feedback on the class average and where I can improve.
So it's a very, very similar interface between staff and students, and I think a very clear and easy to use one.